Hi guys, it's Dom here from Waddling About Rocking Out. Just had a wonderful chat with Phil Owen, the head of engineering at D3T. Obviously, they've come up with some incredible games in recent years. We talked to Phil about the workplace culture at D3T and what they're doing around accessibility and diversity for the games industry, and as well a little bit about what Phil loves about working in the video games industry. So I hope you guys enjoy this. Thank you for spending time with us. Thank you for checking it out, and we'll see you again soon. Phil, mate, it's a pleasure to sit down with you today. Obviously, I wanted to talk a little bit about your career in gaming. Obviously, the mission statement of D3T and things you've got coming up. But
Mhm.
obviously, you can't speak for the whole of the company. But for you personally, how do you define success, and what does it mean to you as a person and as someone in the games industry? If they're two different things.
Yeah, I think they're pretty much linked in a way. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, because of being in the games industry a long time, success from my point of view is to create something that makes other people happy. That's what I see as a success.
Mm,
There's obviously you could look at sales or profits or all these sorts of things, but from my point of view, I deem success to be I made a good game that I enjoyed making and made people happy. And I think the same goes in my sort of out of work time, just like making people happy, really.
that's awesome, man. I mean, how does because I guess that's an interesting question. How do you make well, how would you say you make other people happy and how do you make yourself happy? Because I think that's a lot of things people put either too much effort on making other people happy
Yeah,
and not enough effort on making themselves happy. How do you do that in a constructive manner, Phil?
but there's definitely a balance to be struck there. I think you just got to surround yourself with good friends, good people.
Yeah.
And with like-minded interests, and make the most of any opportunities you get. I think that's probably the way I would look at it.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you've been in the games industry for a long time, since the sort of early 90s.
Uh,
What was what were the biggest sort of challenges you had breaking into the industry? Because again, you obviously with that lovely attitude of making people happy, it sounds like you've been able to make a lot of friends. But what were the challenges that you had breaking into the industry? And have you kind of seen
um,
any of those challenges lessen for any for younger people getting into the game?
to be honest, I was super lucky when I got how I got into the games. My journey was certainly not standard in any way. I mean, I you know I started to teach myself how to program very early stages of on computers when the ZX Spectrum
Right.
and Commodore 64 came out.
Yeah. Nice.
So I was really interested in games then, and I just thought, you know what, I want to start making these. So I started
Yeah.
teaching myself. Well, then I went away to university and didn't really have any clue really how to get into the games industry. But it was a complete by chance that while I was growing up and while I was in university, I was quite a good golfer. Played golf a
Right.
lot, and I won a lot of competitions. I was actually I don't well, I was pretty good. Put it that way. And I got into a competition and got paired with someone who already worked in the industry. He worked in a company called DID. He worked in the QA department. We got talking about games. We got talking about what I was doing at uni, what I was interested in, and he said, "Do you want to come and work for me for 50 quid a week?" And I said, "During your summer break?" And I said, "Yeah, of course I will." And that was how I got in. And then once I'd passed my degree, I went to the technical director of digital media design, who were based in Warrington at the time, and just said, "Can I have a job?" And he went, "Yeah, go on then." And that was me in. So I was not a standard, but to look back at the challenges now, especially for students and
Mm.
graduates, even people without degrees, to get into the games industries, it's you have to work really hard. You have to be very determined. Um, really try not to be deterred because you will apply to good games companies and they will reject you. Try not to, try and take some positives. And I think the main thing I would say is, and I've said this to a lot of students in the past, once you've got your foot in the door, make sure you grab that opportunity with both hands and don't let it go. So
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And that moves on to my next question then. What would be your three key tips? Again, I know you can't speak for the rest of the company, D3T, or
Mhm.
anybody else you've worked with, but for you personally, what are the three things that you want to see from somebody? But also, as a second part of that question, what do you not want to see? What mistakes do you see people commonly make?
What I want to see is, first of all, a really good portfolio. It doesn't matter what discipline you're in. A really good portfolio alongside you, a really good CV. A real passion for making games, and not just if you're on a degree course, not just saying, "Here's the work I did at uni." We like to see, "Here's the work you did at uni, and here's the other work I did as well, and here's the game jams I've been in, and things like that." So that's what I like to see. I like to see enthusiasm. I like to see passion, and I like to see a real interest, not only in games, but an interest in us. An interest in what we do as a company as well. And I
Yeah,
think the biggest mistake, or not mistakes, but I think just not being yourself. I say to the students, if I want to do talks to them when I go to unis, you if they get an interview, and I've sort of sat in thousands of interviews. Um, I know you're going to be nervous, and I know you're going to be worried, and I know you're going to be stressed. But after 5 or 10 minutes of our conversation, because that's what the interview will be with me, I want to see you. I want to see how what you're really like. Don't pretend to be someone else. Don't pretend to be someone you think I want to see. Be you, because um, a massive part of being in a game studio and working with creative people is contributing to culture and environment within that studio. And if you don't contribute, you don't fit in, then you always think that, then you're likely not going to get the job, no matter how good of an artist or a programmer you are. It's vitally important that you are good at what you do, and you also understand the culture and environment of creative people. So that's
mm,
why we want. That's what we want to see. So
absolutely, yeah.
yeah. So a big mistake is not being yourself. Just be you. That's all we want to see.
Mm, Interesting point you make about the culture, the office culture and things like that. What sort of when I mean, one of the things that we come up against quite a lot, is people, not doing their research. It's part of understanding the culture at D3T, for example, about researching the company values, about researching yourself, and
Yeah.
about you can get a good grounding from the vibe by looking at what's out there and what's available. Uh, but so is that what you would say to anybody else to kind of, because I
Um,
get the idea of
yeah.
company culture freaks people out, I think sometimes.
I know. Yeah, absolutely. Though you hit the nail on the head there. I mean, it's kind of like one of the biggest things you can do if you come for an interview is with me is have done your research and have questions. I love being asked questions, and especially if one of the first questions I'll ask people in an interview is, "What do you know about D3T?" And if their answer is, "Well, you make games," I'm not going to be too impressed. But if your answer is, "Well, you're a work pack, you've made this game, this game, this game, your development director's called Steve, your head of studio's called Rich," and they've actually made an effort, immediately the rapport builds, the understanding builds, and we can actually understand that they want to. They're kind of interviewing me as I'm interviewing them, which is the way an interview should be, really.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It's more like that conversation. Instead of it turns an
Yes.
interview into a conversation, which is something you said a few minutes ago,
Yeah.
which I think is a really good bit of advice. Have you made any mistakes yourself, Phil? Because a lot of times people tend to, obviously it's a very positive vibe, doing these interviews, but a lot of times people avoid or mistakes don't get talked about. So have you made any mistakes as an example that you could bring up and say, well, this is what I did and I learned from this in this way, if you know what I mean?
Well, no, I'm obviously perfect, so no mistakes there, right? No.
Yeah.
Oh God, you put me on the spot there. I'm just trying to
So,
think. I
yeah,
probably have.
sorry, mate.
Yeah, I probably have, and I probably will again. But I mean, one of the key messages I have to all the programmers in my team is, listen, that there's people. We're only human. People will make mistakes. There is no blame. There are just problems to solve. That's
Mm,
it. So, and it's how we solve them positively. And I think that's the way my attitude. How I've always addressed working in the games industry is to look at if there is an issue, not to point fingers, just to say, right, how are we going to solve this and how are we going to get it done?
Yeah.
And I think, I can't think of an example really, but I'm sure there's loads.
It's all right. Yeah, no, fair enough. That sort of idea around, kind of there's only, there's no blame. There's only problems to solve, and I like that, and I think that's a lot less intimidating.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
As a
And there's an expectation of we're human, and it's not an expectation of failure, but people are going to make mistakes, and we have to deal with it, and we have to deal with it positively.
Absolutely. Going back to yourself now, I suppose it's a little bit similar line of questioning, but what have you learned about yourself? What's a lesson that you wish you'd have known when you started out? Like, what have you learned about yourself from that person that went into, started learning code from a very young age and is now where you are at D3T, getting this, getting the projects in, global projects. What have you learned about yourself? How have you changed and developed as a person?
I think I've learned really just first and foremost, making games is not easy, and it's a really rewarding and it's a really challenging field industry to work in, as far as I'm concerned. And I've also been very lucky, but I think my development from junior programmer all those years ago in the 90s to being a head of a department now, I think you have to learn an awful lot as you progress through from being a programmer to a senior programmer to a lead programmer. And I think one of the hardest things, lessons I had to learn was how to delegate effectively and how to get the best out of the team or the sub team that you're managing. And that's a really difficult skill, but it does take time and experience to learn. But once you can do that, you know you can get the best out of people. I think that was one of the biggest challenges I faced. You look at things, you look at a task to do or some functionality to do, and you think, well, I can do that in 5 minutes. I'll just do it. But all of a sudden, all those 5 minutes build up to 3 days, and everybody's waiting on you to do your code, do your work. So I think the best thing to do is to, one of the hardest things, the best things I learned is to delegate effectively and get the best out of people.
Absolutely. And is there, obviously there is some points in there, is there a particular moment, like not necessarily a defining moment in your career, because I'm sure there's many more to come, but moments where you, perhaps a particular game or a particular project that you've worked on, where you've seen that collaboration and it's gone not exactly as you want it to, because I'm sure that never happens, but are the moments where you will look back when you finish your career and go, I love doing that. I love working on that. The team, we were all in sync or mostly in sync. Can you give me some examples, perhaps?
I think the best sort of example I can give you there is when we worked on Lego City when I was working at Traveller's Tales. I mean, Lego City was a game we'd never done anything of the like before, a massive open world area. The problems to solve with an open world game are immense.
Yeah.
And the team, it took nearly 3 years to make the game, and it needed that time because I think the team really did pull together. We really did solve some really significant problems like world streaming and collision, and just to fill in the world with life, having a population that acted sensibly, having cars and traffic systems that worked correctly, and all of these had to sit on top of each other and interact as best as possible. And I think it's the game I'm most proud of that I worked directly on. I was lead programmer on that, and it's the game I think I look back on most fondly as well, because we solved, just from the point of view of solving so many problems, and solving them as best as we possibly could.
Absolutely, man. It's really nice to sort of see you reflect on that. Before we talk about sort of future projects and things like that, things you're looking forward to, there's a couple more questions around location. And I'm particularly interested in, because certainly in the music and arts industry, location comes up a lot in terms of you need to move here, you need to be in this area. And I'm getting the sense from my research into, I've been a long time video game player, but sort of just starting to work in, a bit more in video game journalism, that location matters a little bit less than, say, music and things like that. You don't necessarily need to be in London. You guys are not based there. You're in the northwest. So, does location matter from your perspective? Do you think people need to be need to have been somewhere or need to have worked somewhere? Can you get experience anywhere you are these days?
I think we can. I think the last 2 years have proved that to us. People were certainly our industry was forced into work from home, where we've always been in the studio. But now we're getting people back into the studio, which is really good. I mean, you know, as far as I'm concerned, the Northwest has been a hotbed of game development for a long time.
Mm,
With companies in Manchester and Liverpool, and then there's a group of companies in Luncorn where we are. And I've my whole career has been in the Northwest. I haven't moved anywhere in the world. I had
amazing.
chances to move. I had chances to go to America. I had chances to go to Australia, but I never took them. I stayed
Mm,
where my family was, where I like to work. So I don't really think it matters that much. What matters should be the company you want to work for, the games you want to work on, how creative you want to be. I think that's what really matters now, especially with the sort of advent of more work from home and flexible working hours and things like
yeah,
that.
that's really, yeah. I didn't mean to interrupt, but that's really interesting
So,
because again, you're one of the first people since I've been doing this series that sort of said, actually being, staying where you can be most creative is what matters. Because a lot of people do go, well, for example, in the music industry, it's you need to move to London, you need to do this, or it certainly
mhm.
used to be, certainly a little bit more different now. But it's interesting to get you've had opportunities to move to America, and you've had opportunities to do that, but you've turned it down, and that hasn't from my research, that hasn't hampered you at all. It hasn't
No, not
lost
at
you
all.
opportunities or anything like that.
No, I mean, I don't regret the decisions that I made. I mean,
Mm,
I've worked for a number of companies, I've had a number of opportunities, but I was happy to stay in the Northwest and to work here. I mean, I went to university in Manchester, spent 15 years in Manchester, and
yeah,
it's a great city to live in, and
yeah, man.
I enjoyed it. And so I think it really is about, from my point of view, about like I say, what are you interested in? Where do you want to work? Games do you want to work on? How do you see your career path go? I mean, it's it doesn't really matter where you are in the world, really.
Absolutely, it's a really good point. And thank you for that honest reflection as well, because it's interesting to get that viewpoint. Sort of a couple more questions before we finish. Then, one of the reasons I'm doing this series, and I was asked to do this series, was because I work a lot in the music industry and in accessibility. I myself have cerebral palsy, so I'm able to work with venues and things like that to talk about accessibility. Now, I want to talk about the video games industry in terms of accessibility and mental health, and disabilities, and how the games industry has changed and how you've observed it change for better or for worse. It's your reflection. But if you can tell me how you've seen the video games industry embrace accessibility, diversity, difference over your career, that would be really, really useful.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely for the better. I think the games industry is uh, made massive strides, especially over the last 5, 10 years, to really embrace, you know, really just embrace cultures and embrace accessibility, embrace, you know, um, even just embracing technology. I think the thing with the games industry that I've noticed and that I always talk about is how fast and how quick the games industry adapts and moves and updates. And that is in all areas, not just in a new console or a new PC. It's in mental health. It's in diversity. It's in accessibility. And I think in a lot of ways we now actually push these things forward and drive them forward because society's changed uh, for the better. I think as far as with the likes of mental health and understanding that and accepting disabilities and accepting gender diversity. So as far as I'm concerned, I think it, it's a very welcoming place in all areas of the games industry now, and there's still ways to go and still ways to improve, and I'm sure that we will find further ways to improve. But right now, I think the pace at which, I think the best way to describe it is the pace at which the games industry moves in all areas is so quickly, and that's one of the reasons why I love working in the industry, because we have to move quickly, we have to drive things forward, because technology and society and social trends all move forward as quick, and we need to be at the forefront of that.
Absolutely. And can you talk me, because again, we talked a little bit about the culture of D3T a little bit earlier on. Now, obviously, bearing that in mind, bearing accessibility, diversity in mind, what would you say are the key culture, parts of the D3T culture, the things that you enforce proudly when you spread the message, when you go to universities, or when you give up your time to to people like myself? What are the key messages of the D3T ethos? Because you can read about it, obviously
Yeah,
on websites, but from your in your own words, what are you most proud of when it comes to the D3T ethos?
I think uh, I think we look after each other.
Mm,
That's what it is. We look after each other no matter what, and we help. We uh, form ideas. We create, and as we go along these journeys of making games, we make sure we look after each other and everyone's happy and we're doing the best for each other. And I think that's the way. I think that's the core to what DUT believes in, is really that having that sense of belonging, and having the people that are fantastic, that contribute to the studio environment, whether they're working from home, remotely, flexible, doesn't matter now. We do so much to bring everyone together as much as we possibly can. But I think we just look after each other, and work hard, and love what we do, and and I think that's the best way I could put it.
Absolutely, absolutely. A few more questions then. For yourself, obviously, before we started, we talked a little about your, what you do with your time off. But I think that's important to talk about, because again, I think the video games industry, media industry, arts people, and there is that culture of 24/7, 7 days a week
Mhm.
working and pushing yourself now. And obviously, that is important to work. It's work hard, like you said, but as I have learned and I've spoken to other people, you can overdo it. So
Mhm.
in your down, what do you make time for downtime? How do you do that? Have you been a workaholic in the past in terms, having the pressures of, I guess, of being, being a developer, working, creating. How important is downtime for you, and how do you make time to do that? What do you do?
I think it's vitally important. It's something that I've learned, again, to relate to one of your previous questions. It's one of the things I've learned over the years, is that, you know, D3T was founded on an anti-crunch culture, and we still have it. So,
Yeah.
um, what we really enforce is to have your downtime, have your family time, your friends time.
Mm.
We don't want people working, and we certainly don't have people working any ridiculous hours. I mean,
Yeah.
it is to a certain extent a learned thing, because you get people, students coming, graduates coming out of university, and they're so enthusiastic. They want to get everything done. They want to,
Yeah.
they want to work and be productive and progress their careers. And then you got me as an old timer going around the office saying, "Oh, you go home," and
Yeah.
that's the way it should be. As far as from my point of view, I love playing games anyway. So my downtime is playing games. That's what I do. I've got a problem with Lego, as you can see. So and
No such
really,
thing.
I just spending time with friends, going to the pub,
Yeah.
watching TV, just the standard things. But the key, I think, like you sort of expressed, is that downtime and relaxation time is vital, because if you're in any way tired or stressed or unhappy, you're not going to be doing the best work. Happy people do the best work. That's the way it is, and that's the way the world should be. We make sure um, people do get their relaxing in their I suppose R&R, I suppose, is the best way to call it.
Yeah.
And we do that by also having social WhatsApp groups, and D&D, and people. going to game jams most of the time, sometimes when they're available. And I think it's about having that social groups outside of work as well, but they still
Mm.
work together in the company also aids that sort of culture as well.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. And thank you for sharing that. I mean, what, like, talking about, again, you work in games, but you also love games and you love Lego. So tell me again, give me some games that you really love that you can go back to over and over again, especially as you work on them all day, every day pretty much. It's fascinating to hear that you go home and you will use games to relax too, and
Mm-hmm.
also Lego. So where does that fascination come from? What games do you love, and where did your love of Lego first come from?
Oh God, I've loved Lego since I was, since my early days, I suppose, just building it. And I was lucky enough to work for Traveller's Tales and did 18 Lego games, and that was kind of didn't help my addiction in any way because I'm surrounded by it, as you can see.
Yeah.
But with the game, my games I play, I mean, I love From Software games, so any of the Soul series, that may not seem like relaxation to some people, but it is
No,
to me.
no, man.
Yeah. And obviously, there's games like Uncharted and
Yeah.
GTA and just all these sort of grand adventure games. That's what I like. I'm not a massive fan of, even though I love football, I'm not a massive fan of football games. I'm not a
Mm.
massive fan of first person shooters because they're not really my thing. I'm pretty rubbish at them, actually. It's more the third person, give me a big sword like
Yeah.
Assassin's Creed Valhalla or Dark Souls or
Yeah.
Elden Ring, and I'm happy. So that's what I like.
That's cool, man. I appreciate that. That's great. So on to finish up then the promo bit.
Go
That
on.
you can tell me what projects have you got coming up. What is there you would like to plug? And where can people find you? What where can people go aside from the obvious, I guess. What would you? I'll summarize this question. Where do you want people to go? Is what I should
Well, I
ask.
can't tell you about future projects because I'll be breaking my NDA,
Yeah,
so
yeah, no problem.
I can't do that. But what I can do, I mean, I suppose, I don't really, I can plug D3T really because as far as I'm concerned, I've worked at quite a few games in studios in my time. I've been in the industry for over 27 years now, and to be honest, D3T is the best company I've worked for by far. Just the way they work, their beliefs, their goals, their standards, they're just uh, not comparable, and I love working for them. And if you wanted to find me, obviously there's links on the website, but usually when I do a talk at universities, I tell students find me on LinkedIn and connect because I will answer your connection and I will accept it. So
Mm.
that's a really good place to be as far as I'm concerned because you get to see what other people, how they're working, how other studios work, and what I'm up to really.
Yeah, absolutely, man, absolutely. And so again, for anybody listening to this or watching or someone that's reading the article, you know, you have gone into it a little bit in terms of what a student can do. So in terms of D3T, if somebody wants to check you guys out, wants to get involved in what you do, you want to see obviously portfolio university work. You want to see what they've been doing after university, how they've been getting involved in the industry,
Mm-hmm.
and make contact with you that way. Is it as
Yeah.
simple as that?
Well, I mean, I wouldn't describe it as
Yeah,
simple, but
yeah, maybe not.
it's effective. I
Yeah,
mean, it's like if someone like me comes to your university to do a talk, go along. If there's networking events, I know people always hear networking events and go, oh no, I don't like networking. If there's a network event, just go along. You don't have to say anything or do anything. Just see who's there. Get onto the likes of LinkedIn where you can see people in the industry actually putting up things about what they've done, what they've created, um, and then build yourself a good portfolio online, a website, set yourself up a website, put all your relevant, most recent work first and foremost in your portfolio because I mean that's what I want to see. I want to see your skill set right now. You might have done a game 4 years ago that you're very proud of, but I want to see what you're really like now. and treat your application or treat things within the industry as a complete package. It's not just your CV, it's not just your cover letter, it's not just your portfolio, it's not just people who you've connected with and spoken to. It's the whole package that will get you a job.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, man. And to finish off, and this could be games related or not. What is the best? Because everybody has advice, and everybody gives advice. But what is the best piece of advice you've ever received? Something again that you take with you, if there is anything that you take with you and use regularly.
I think the one thing I do, and it's kind of what I base my university presentation on. The best piece of advice is just be yourself.
Yeah,
Just be you. Don't don't try to pretend or think that you need to say this because I want to hear it or someone wants
mm,
to hear it. Just be you,
yeah.
and you'll be accepted.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Well, Phil, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. Thank you for spending time with me, I wish you very best of luck on all the future projects. Obviously, it's an exciting time. So, thank you so much
Mm-hmm.
for taking the time for me. Appreciate it, man.
No problem. It's been great to chat.